It's 2 minutes past midnight, and this is Guitar by Night. Guitar by Night. I think that as long as I'm in my place right now, which I'm about to leave in sometime, I'm not sure when exactly, but it's gonna be possibly right after New Year's, possibly. I'm not sure entirely. I want to keep this thing regular. I want to get some ideas out. I want to do some live streaming because I don't do much of live talking recently, and basically my verbal processing is fading away in a quite terrible manner, and everything turns into even more incoherent rumble than usual. But for now, I'll try to do the best out of the situation and talk about weird guitars, my weird guitars, which are weird for different reasons, and why it's a very good idea to have a weird guitar. Oh, hello, David. So let's start with this thing, because I'll be talking about playing and about guitars and how they affect my playing. But this thing is very special for me. I found it locally, some sort of Facebook ad. What is this thing? This is a Japanese Squire of a Silver Series, and they were made between 91 and 93. I believe this is a 93 model, and right after that, this Squire thing was rebranded straight away to Fender. It became standard Japanese Fender with go-to tuners, really good solid trem bridge, ceramic pickups that for some reason many people believe that if it's not Alnico of sorts, it's possibly trash. And funny thing is that in my experience, I played some absolutely stunning ceramic magnet pickups, including American-built Gretches, reissue Gretches with Filtertrons. The standard ones were ceramic, and I believe, and they were okay. They didn't sound like vintage ones, but who the hell knows how the vintage ones should sound? I mean, they're already 50 years old. The magnet has faded away, so they don't sound like they should, and inconsistencies were so great between each and single one of them that it doesn't really mean anything. I think it's just a matter of perception. If I like a pickup, how it sounds, it's a good pickup. I don't care, if it's Alnico or ceramic magnet, or if it's just, I don't know, some compressed poop that is magnetic by any chance. If it does its job, it's absolutely fine. And also, there's one of the observations, because I really like Japanese Fenders. They have certain unique features. They were made for Japanese markets or domestic markets, and they had certain traits that were very specific to a very different way of seeing a Fender guitar. I mean, their Japanese Fender was there for different reasons than American Fender. Not only because of the legal and export stuff, but I would say they were looking for guitars that were closer to the vintage ones, because uh, because of I believe old rock and roll and surf music that had great following. I mean, basically Ventures, once their fame faded away in the U.S., they toured Japan like forever. I think they still do, or something like that. Maybe they don't, but it wasn't that long ago that they stopped touring Japan. But the thing is that it's way easier to get a great 50s vintage spec'd Stratocaster from Japan than from anywhere else until recently, but that's in a minute. So this is possibly the least odd guitar that I have. What I found quite interesting is that I knew what it was because it was I traded it for an amp with a gentleman here locally, and I knew that these are usually all Japanese Strats are absolutely great, even if they have plenty of play where you can bring them back to a playable condition with no problems. And I had plenty of them on the bench, and I did fret levels and setups, and I never encountered anything that was like wrong about them, or there was like a design flaw that I could tell there was some inconsistency in manufacturing or in design that just made them hard to bring back to playable state. I mean, they were the build quality is usually expected to be really great, which is maybe not a great thing because it raises expectations, right? But this is 300. You can buy this kind of Squire for £300 any day. There are plenty of them. Some people on eBay are asking higher prices for them, but this is basically a maybe £350 guitar, and almost all of them, every single one that I have seen for sale, they have plenty of wear on fingerboard. The finish is usually worn, which means that these guitars are well played and people enjoy playing them, and they play them a lot. And I was quite surprised to find out that possibly the only new guitar player that I actually kind of follow and care about, a young Welsh gentleman of the name of Chris Buck. He's got one, and he uses one a lot as an old jeans guitar, one to bang around, to play in the places that it can get scratched or banged or dinged or anything. The one that we don't have to care too much about. That's the great one, and I absolutely love playing it. It sounds great. I had a higher grade standard Japanese Stratocaster that I got quite recently, and it had exactly the same ceramic pickups, and it sounded great. And even a bass player that I play with actually really enjoyed the sound because he believed that it blended really well with his bass. And it was a red Stratocaster that I was not meant to sell at any point. And of course, 2 weeks later, I sold it to a dear friend of mine. So it's still in the family, and I don't mind. It was absolutely great. I didn't want to sell it because I wish I had photos. I found a 94 standard Japanese Stratocaster in candy apple red. It was gorgeous, and there was not a single scratch on this thing, and there was no play where it was a guitar that's been kept in a closet for over 20 years, and it just didn't make any sense. And this thing, it played great. It had a rosewood fingerboard that looked like a fresh from the store, like it has not been touched by a human hand ever. So I played a couple of gigs on this guitar, and I passed it on to a friend of mine. But I want to show you the odd things, and I'm wondering, let's maybe start with my main my main tool for gigging recently, which I actually took out of a guitar bag. So that's the Sunburst Strat, single ply 50 style pickguard, something that I really I love single ply pickguards. I mean, they're for me they're like the thing. I mean, that's how I feel the Strat should look like. But anyway, okay, I'll be back with the weird one. And here it is. This is a secret guitar. Secret guitar. Okay, so what is this thing? This thing is a completely beat up guitar that I got for 40 quid from a young man in Hollywood, County Down. No, it was Bangor, sorry, from Bangor, County Down. And this thing is Aria STG that came with non-working pickup and completely butchered electronics, and I converted this thing into a combo bass and guitar thing with bass strings for E&A. It has a Telecaster saddle in here for those two strings, because the intonation for bass strings is way behind the range of regular saddles. So I removed these saddles, I slightly drilled the holes. It was like a 5-minute job, and of course I did the work on the nut so that the string would be slightly closer to the frets, just like they should be, otherwise they would be on top of the nut, and the intonation would be thrown thrown off the lower frets. So this thing is scratched, banged, and in general fairly incomplete, but to me it is the ultimate comping device. And I'll just check the tuning and I'll show how cool this thing is and how much I can do with it. Okay, so this is a take on an old idea that I had some time ago of having a comping device for a singer or for another musician that combines bass and guitar in the same instrument, hopefully without too much of a learning curve to make it work for a guitar player. Of course, I was wrong, because it's never, you know, simple ideas are usually pretty cool when we imagine them, but when they're applied, even though it seems like, okay, this thing is possibly all right, there are certain shortcomings, and usually it's the player that is the main shortcoming. So what is this thing, and what is it for? Okay, I got 4 normal guitar strings that I can play guitar stuff on. Right? There's nothing special about that, but E and A are bass strings tuned and are just like the bass is supposed to be tuned. E and A, but we're at the short scale, so they don't have too much tension. Because they don't have too much tension, the intonation would go sharp because of the finger pressure, right? And I basically use this little Telecaster saddle to make it as close as possible to the proper pitch. But what I can do with it, well, quite a lot. So depending on the style that I'm aiming at, from something, say, very simple like having like this rock or 8-note groove. I'm using my pick to do the bass note and fingers to play the chord. I'll just get a slightly cleaner sound. This thing has. Oh yeah, that's slightly better. Okay. Something more soulful. Latin stuff. Walk-in bass lines with just a hint of chord somewhere, say like on a blues in F. And so on and so forth. I noticed that actually using a middle end bridge pickup makes it sound slightly tighter and more consistent. So it's usually the combination that I like using. Middle pickup also sounds not bad. Just got a message from a friend of mine. So this is like one thing I think I can go through some styles of music, and basically rootsy stuff. So for example, something like slow blues, say in the G, because I need to work around certain limitations, and sometimes I need to give up on chord or find some shortcut to play the bass. But say main problem is that usually guitar habits, they get in the way, because at this point we are very low in the bandwidth in general. I mean, this is like having a bass guitar strapped on top of a regular 6-string. So if I play my G major chord just like here on the G major shape, I have an ugly, inharmonious perfect fifth in the bottom that sometimes can be overpowering. When I go for major third, it's going to be even worse. It's, this huge warbly interval that we usually want to avoid at the bottom of the sound spectrum. So by default, I tend to do a lot of palm muting to make these things work. So for example, doing this sort of 1-5 movement. So I want to keep the bass note sharp and tight, but the chord ringing. So if I want to keep the chord short, I'll just release my fretting fingers. And this is one of those cases where thumb over the neck is very, very useful tool, because here's my triad, my root and fifth in bass, and I just use thumb and my ring finger to fret down these notes, because if I keep them, they can ring over each other, or by mistake I can strum them and again introduce some warble that I don't want to be there. So yeah, I think that there is plenty of cool stuff that that is possible to do with that thing, but every Sunday I have a gig with a great vocalist and harmonica player, Reverend Doc, and because it's a duo gig, I use this as a comping machine, but I also have a loop pedal that basically I use to have what I already played back during my solo. So this guitar is being used both as a bass, rhythm guitar, and lead guitar at the same time, just by having the Wii loop pedal. And the way I do it is that I just turn on recording on verses that are being played or sang by a front person, and I do the comping, and I try to keep this comping very gentle. So that I have some room to play solo on top of that. And then once it's my turn to solo, I just press the loop pedal again. It stops recording and plays back exactly from the top of the form where I started recording. So it's a very easy way to get all the parts going. I think that's one of pretty cool solutions for people who are busking or playing solo gigs, or just want to have like an extra layer that sounds convincing, and I would say is easy to handle, because it doesn't require any prior preparation. I don't have to pre-record anything. It's just happening as I go. There are of course certain certain things to watch out for, and obviously first thing is the tempo. That usually naturally we tend to speed up. So it's good to remember that whenever I retrigger my loop, it can be slightly slower than what I just finished playing before I disengage the loop and it goes back to the tempo. So that's one of the things. And another thing is certain necessity to be precise in turning on, turning off recording. And because it's done with the foot, it feels slightly odd at first, but after a while it feels okay. It feels okay to use this contraption, whatever it is. I mean, I have two loop pedals because I like redundancy. I like to have something. I like to have a backup when something farts out or stops working entirely. So I like to have an extra. I have a simple one that's just like one button and one knob. It just records and plays back. And I got a little Roland RC30, I believe, with two pedals. And the good thing is that one pedal is turning on and off recording and playback. The other one is full stop, and pressing both pedals is like erasing the memory. So it's just easier this way. I don't have to double click or turn any knobs, so it's fairly easy to operate. Okay, let's have a look at certain fun limitations that come with this bass guitar hybrid thing. I think that this idea used in the real world on an album, I believe it was done by Chad Atkins, and he put some gauges pretty close to what I have in here, tuned an octave lower, and he recorded an album using this kind of idea. And his name of this contraption was Octabass. But right now Octabass is I believe it's a trademarked name for an octaver pedal from EBS, bass amp company. So I think that googling Octabass doesn't really return anything useful. So this thing is what it is. I mean, it's just two bass strings on a guitar, and some concepts, right, that make it work. So what works and what doesn't? Things that kind of work. Triads are cool. Spread voicings. So for example, root, fifth and third. This thing works really good. Styles of music, anything that involves grooves that are in place. So rock stuff, straight 8 things, root fifth movements works remarkably well. Whoops. Oh, I have a thing rattling in my ear. I don't have any more. Walking lines, and this is where it gets tricky, because walking lines require quite a workload, and skips and planning and joining chords together, and there's not much room to play the rest of the chords. So the way I like to think about that is I usually just leave the guide tones, 7th and 3rd of the chord, and try to focus on the walking line, because usually when I don't play the chord, nothing really happens. Nothing's going to happen. But if I break the continuity of bass line, it sounds like there's a proper mistake again. So say on something like All the Things You Are, I would possibly play. And so on and so forth, focusing on the bass line more than the chord. And again, it's not that crucial because usually the soloist is like filling the top end. Right now it sounds bare because there's no line on top of that, right? It's just comping, just a backing track that leaves plenty of space for a soloist. So that's also one of those great things. Again, so yeah, grooves we mentioned. Well, putting any more sophisticated stuff, say like maybe not sophisticated, but like regular root third fifth line, and trying to put chords somewhere on top of that is quite tricky, because we're simply not born with enough fingers to make it work. So I would have to combine my but I feel like I'm choking some sort of animal. I have to put a lot of force to keep that, just those two notes, and I use my thumb to play root, index to play third, and pinky to play fifth. So it's quite tricky. Possibly something like. So this is easier, but I'm cheating. I'm using open string. So it's C, E, G, A, G, and just a single finger to play a triad on top. So that's a tricky one. I could also do something like. So I could have root, third, and fifth lower, but it doesn't sound right, really. But the cool thing is that even here, 10th, 12th fret, it still sounds close enough. So this is a useful range still, right? When we try to play like guitar arrangements with low bass note, anything above this F starts sounding just like a treble notes, like part of the line, not like a bass line as such. So there's also something to find on those bass strings above 10th fret. So that's pretty cool. What else? Oh, yes. For example, this A minor chord that I would just play on a guitar and wouldn't really give it a second thought. When I play it just like as a bar on a single fret, the sympathetic resonance of the strings makes this note sound no matter what I do. I need to hold it with my finger so it doesn't resonate, because if it does, it just again introduces warble of a small interval in the low range. So possibly this fingering would be better, just to hold this bass note from sounding. So it's a game of blocking strings, of making them of keeping them tamed, and again right hand palm muting, fretting hand tricks. But sometimes I want to keep this note ringing, and that's where it gets slightly tricky, right? And of course, use of open strings helps a lot. So if I have, say, this A7 here, and I want to play root fifth, I can use thumb over and just fret in it and let it go. But if I want to change the chord to G, at this point I need to play a proper chord. One of the hardest tunes, most obvious and hardest tunes at the same time, Mystery Train. Mystery Train that on a guitar would just work just fine. Here, if I hold E major shape and want to keep and want to have this root fifth movement, I need to work really hard not to play A string with E string at the same time. So it's so I usually just give up. I mean, I played this thing on intro and then just go. Well, that long black train got my baby and gone. Freight train is coming around the bend. And so on. Yeah, okay, so this is my weird instrument number 2. And let me introduce to you weird instrument number C. Because we're in hexadecimal, so it's going to be number C. Where should I put it? Somewhere around here. I don't want to lose it. Okay. Word instrument number B25 Longhorn Baritone. Longhorn Baritone, almost 30 inches. Absolutely gorgeous thing. It can do a lot. It can do a lot. It's not just cowboy songs and weird plonks and I don't know, and some low-end twang. This thing can do a lot. And I'll just make sure that it's in tune. Okay. It is, but it is. This thing is tuned to A standard. So it's basically fifth lower than a guitar, and almost as low as bass. But it has amazing ability to handle very broad range of tunings. So, for example, with these strings that I have in here, which I believe this is a set of 13 to 72. These are Ernie Bowls, so the purple ones, because there aren't that many baritone sets on the market. So there's the Dario one, which is 14 to 68. Ernie Bowl is 13 baht to 72, and I believe that there was a 13 to 68 elixirs, but I think they had unwound the G string. There was something like that, because I used those 13s, those baritone 13s, on electric guitar for quite a long time, because this was like a good balanced set of 13s with unwound G string, which was quite important to me. But this thing, I want to have it in frame. First of all, it's really easy to intonate this guitar. It works really well. Now, speaking of range, this is bass range. I mean, on one gig, the bass player had some. He was late. It was like a session, so it wasn't that crucial for everyone to be on time. But I was already set up with this thing, and I could actually play convincing bass lines for tunes, and. And so on and so forth. And I could also play lead lines. So this thing, it's quite interesting because it sits in between bass and guitar. And because it has 24 frets, so it's the neck is long enough to actually make something useful. I even experimented with putting very thin set of strings, like 9 to 42, and even with this long scale, it can be easily tuned to E standard, and it sounds very, very stable. Because with longer scale, it requires more tension. Standard set of 9s feels really rigid compared to anything else, and the chords sound really interesting. It's just a different timbre. I mean, not only because of the pickups and the general construction, because this thing is a hollow body. It's a masonite on a wooden frame, so basically it's made of very cheap material. I still have no idea how they managed to paint it and not let the masonite soak, because it soaks and bulges when it's wet. I know, because I tried to build a guitar on a wooden frame with pretty much the same material, and it's really hard to paint this thing. I mean, it's possible to paint, but any moisture, once it gets onto the material, it just deforms it in a terrible way. Anyway. Now, what is pretty cool about this thing? 2 lipstick pickups, and right now I played on the one that is closer to the neck, and though it's, you know, like in relation to the string length, it's more like a middle pickup, but yeah, it's close. I mean, there are 2, and this one it's a neck position. It doesn't sound like neck position, but let's call it neck position. It behaves like neck position, but it sounds like something different. The interesting thing about the electronics of this guitar is, although it's a 3-way switch, tone and volume, in middle position, these pickups are in series, so output signal is like twice as loud at least. So this guitar comes to life when it's in middle position. Just to compare, this is just neck pickup. This is just bridge pickup, and these are both. And I'm strumming with the same very soft touch, so it's huge. Right, this is just neck, just bridge, both. So it sounds like their idea of having these electronics work was just to have option for both pickups and don't really care about anything else. But I think it sounds really great on both pickups. So it's a professional production. Everything falls on the floor. Sorry for this awful interruption, because what I have in here is a Phantom Power to 5-volt converter that I use for my lapel mic, and this thing is bulky and heavy, and I don't have I'm wearing my sweatpants, and there's absolutely no way that I can mount it in any way because it would take my pants off, which is possibly slightly less desirable because we're talking guitars here and not plumbing yet. So yes, this thing is magical, and with tremolo, so with tremolo, and reverb, yeah, it does this thing as well. So pretty cool thing. It covers vast area of bass and guitar range, and though it's the neck is slightly wider than you would expect from a guitar, also slightly longer in terms of cutaways. I mean, this 24th fret is just as accessible as anywhere else, so it's quite clever with the Longhorns. Also, this is a Korean instrument. It was a cheap entry-level thing, I believe, in I think it's early 2000s. I got it again from a local shop. Not a single scratch on this thing, and for a very long time nobody wanted it for some reason. But build quality, though there are technological shortcuts on this thing, but it's really great. There's nothing wrong with finish. Finish is really great, and fret ends and nut, everything is just as it's supposed to be. Quite amazing, and yeah, it was one of those impulse buys, but it's a very enjoyable thing to play. It has something inspiring in it that that makes me want to play it from time to time, not too often. I don't want to get used to it. Okay. Another weird guitar. And this time it is... Okay. It's this thing. This thing. Harley Benton lap steel that I bought a very long time ago. And I played it for a while, but I developed really bad habit, and I cannot really play that too long because I'm starting getting some carpal tunnel things because of the movement of a bar. But I'll try to move the camera so that I can show what's going on in here, because this thing is quite clever. Just check the tuning. Okay. And the tuning that I like the most is C6 tuning, which is C, or maybe like that. Okay. C, E, G, A, C, E. That's what it is. C, G, A, C, E. And I have my root, third, fifth, sixth, root, and third again. So what makes this tuning pretty cool is the idea of having a major and minor chord at the same time. This is, again, my phantom converter that refuses to stay in one place. Oh, that's better. Okay, so what can you do? Usually, it is preferred to have thumb picks on picking fingers, but because I switch from guitar to lap steel sometimes, I just like to have a thumb pick, and that usually does the job. I have fingernails to pluck, and this thing basically causes terrible brain fart, because it kind of looks like a guitar, but it doesn't make much sense for a guitar player. The thing that is very familiar is E string. First string is E string, just like on a guitar, so if you can play melody on a single string, you kind of can feel at home with this thing. So okay, let's add some reverb. Let's make it dreamy. So if you just bought this thing, you can get away with playing on first string, and it's kind of like, okay, oh, they're playing in say C major. Kind of, right? Artificial harmonics, I mean, if you can hold them for long enough. But the cool thing is that this tuning has a built-in Western swing Hawaiian thing. So let's assume we're in the key of G. So this is C, D, E, F, G. Here's my G. And I don't really know much about playing this thing. I mean, I do some behind the bar bends. I do some slants. Yeah. And basically the idea is just to get to know how to harmonize certain melodies. So for example, if I want to play like thirds, so there's a lot of skipping from position to position, and I think it's not that fun. Oh, and I think I can play one tune. That's about it. I mean, I use it as an effects instrument. You know, sometimes there's some sort of line. Harmony on top of everything. So I'm not great at this thing, and I possibly never will be, because the more time I spend, the more I'm ruining my wrist, and this is not what I want to end up with. So yeah, this thing spends most of the time in the corner because it's weird. Okay. I was here the whole time. Okay. Now let's see. I'd love to show you around because I got too many guitars at the moment, because depressed and manic me at some point started buying Stratocasters like crazy, and it was pretty much just to find the ones that I really liked and I wanted to keep. But I developed bond with some of them. Woo! Batteries. Okay, so what I have at the moment, because these are the nice ones, and okay, so here, this is my finger. Okay, this is my Buddy Holly Strat. It's Mexican classic series 50s. Right next to it, the green one. Here is the green one. Am I pointing at the green one? Oh yeah, green one. Which is more like surf blue. This is a same guitar but in different color. In between this thing is Japanese. It's called ST57 TX. So it's a Strat with Texas specials. Really nice guitar. The white one is Eric Johnson signature, also an absolutely brilliant thing. Then there is a Telly. The Telly is again Mexican classic 50s Telly, plays great. Then there's my Dwayne Eddy Gretsch, my main thing that I almost don't play at all. And the last thing is Japanese built Aria. This is 1982 guitar, which is exactly the same model that I had when I was 14 years old. It's not the same guitar because it was sold long ago and it had some botched repair on it, and I was not happy with it at all, unfortunately, after all this time. But I got this one and it's absolutely perfect. It's just absolutely amazing that that something that is 40 years old is built to such high standards, and it's like a 16 inches radius. It's a very fast neck, very small frets, so it's quite unusual, quite unusual setup for this red thing, and it's very comfortable, very light guitar. But of course I was more into shredding stuff, so I sold it, and I wanted to have a humbucker bridge position, because hard rock, because metal, right? So this thing is gone. Was gone after a while, but right now I appreciate how great this guitar was, and it's, though it looks like some variation, some variant of Stratocaster, it's slightly different. Pickups are in different spots, so it's just like it's a different flavor. And I still have my black Gretsch, my Electromatic 5125, that I put up for sale, but nobody's interested, so I think I'm gonna keep it. Or I'll sell everything, because it really depends on it really depends if I'm gonna move and start living in a motorhome, and then I won't have space for all this stuff. So we'll see. Who knows? Okay, so I think there's no point in me playing all the Stratocasters, because they're just Stratocasters. It doesn't matter. No matter what internet says, they're all the same. Some of them cost more. I mean, to be perfectly honest, though the construction is pretty much the same of all the Strats, and they are the same and they're different. They make me do different things, but they're all good guitars. That's the thing. If I were to choose one for a gig, I wouldn't complain if I had, Mexican classic thing, or the Eric Johnson signature, which is possibly the best of the bunch. The Japanese is not far behind. I mean, it's just different in concept, because the Eric Johnson Strat it has some modern feature. I mean, the only modern feature on this one is actually a 12-inch radius, so it's like a Gibson radius neck. But is it a significant difference? All the other ones are 7 1/4, and I like them as much. It's not a limiting factor to me at all. So yeah, let's go back to the sunbursty thing. Yeah. Okay. This thing is a really good guitar. It's like a sweet spot of build quality, sound, and general value for money. I mean, this is quite a factor that oh, what an ugly chord. Okay, well, this one is way better. weird, but good. All right, it's been already over an hour. Thanks so much for everyone who tuned in. It was great pleasure having you, and I was really glad that I could share about stories about my weird guitars. And this is the least weird of them all. Have a great night.